Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to video game news. Today is Wednesday, December 24th, aka Christmas Eve 2025. I decided to go back to the drawing board a little bit. The numbers were just not lining up on the resolutions, and YouTube definitely seemed to not really like that weird 1920 by 2160 ratio and size. So I've figured out how to get it back to being more 1080 by 1920 vertical instead of 1920 by 1080 horizontal. But I also got distracted playing Vampire Survivors, and so not all of the pages are the right way. Inherently, what I want to show here is a website called howbigismybrowser.com to highlight what I realized was the problem. There was a secondary setting in Windows that was changing the resolution of how Windows and Firefox thought the resolution was. So even though my screen monitor resolution was 1920 by 2160, notice now it says 2075, so there is still about 90 pixels being lost in the top here because it's not counting the title bar or the tab bar. So yeah, you are losing a little bit there, but that doesn't really matter because it's infinite scroll down and forth, and so you just keep on getting more of that horizontal resolution. But yeah, when I first launched it, it was giving me a smaller resolution, something along this lines, and you can see as I'm zooming in the page that the resolution that the web page thinks it has changes drastically. So the goal here was to definitely have a 1-to-1 ratio, but the problem there, as you might notice, is that what I'm capturing is not all 1920 pixels. I'm only capturing 1080 pixels in the middle, and so for me on the screen, the left column and right column come back into play, and there is just dead space there that the screen is not capturing. So that brings back the Violent Monkey concepts of using Violent Monkey scripts, which is still a weird name for a plugin, in Firefox to change how the website itself reacts, each individual website. So you can see for SteamDB, I've got it fine. It's exactly, or at least I think it's 1080p, and then you can see when I hover over things, it wants to hover and pop things up on the left side where you can't really see it. But then that introduces another problem that I have yet to really address, is that individually there is a thought of making the text bigger, because this is sure a 1-to-1 ratio, but those secret Windows settings under a different window, which yeah, no duh, it obviously was Windows doing something weird, were really addressing an issue, which sadly this probably is more evidence that my eyesight has been fairly bad for a while now, because yeah, I really would have to be about half the distance away from my monitor to comfortably read the size of text that is this size of text, which yeah, I don't know how many people really would be watching a video on YouTube. I also have installed a 90-second delay, I believe now, or a 60-second delay, which yeah, really just puts me further and further away from the chat. But yeah, let me see if I can bring it up and just see what it looks like. Well, you've got the whole top of the video getting clipped off. You get the immediate swipe up for the next stream after a couple of seconds. So yeah, there is less room than really what you would think. Yeah. There's basically no... If we turn the live chat off in the settings, then that makes it a little easier to look at, but you still have the top section just about to this point is getting covered up. So yeah, that is not a great setup. Let's see if we can maybe adjust that live. And yeah, I'm getting the whole blinking thing at the moment too, where it's showing my desktop for a brief second. And that does feel like that's maybe a bug in OBS, or... But yeah, I don't even know why that would be happening at all. As far as advanced scene switcher goes, I don't think that's even enabled. Let's see if we can adjust this. Transform. And then position, I guess, where we want this to be. So how many pixels do we think that would be? And I guess maybe I was thinking that the title bar should... Let's try 150 pixels and see what that looks like. Of course, that's going to be a delay. Yep. While we're doing that, let's just address this one and move this one around. That is pretty much what today is going to be, I think. Is we're going to have a lot of tweaking going on. Yeah. So we want top right to be there. Okay. We might put all of the title bars at the bottom, at the top instead of at the bottom. Or we might just scale up the size. Activate that. So there would need to be some kind of adjustment there, obviously. And that delay is a killer. So while we wait for the delay to kick in, we'll scroll down the SteamDB 24-hour peak level. Now, again, I really need to have things like zoom in to probably 200 times. But if I just zoom in 200 times like this, it doesn't look right. 170 times is almost right, but it's clipping off a lot. And so I need to come back and manually adjust the size of the fonts, which, yeah, websites inherently are changing the size of the fonts all the time. You wish you could scale it. There is a scale CSS tag, but it doesn't quite work. There is also a font size adjust tag that I think is part of CSS, but it may just be part of a lot of websites. It too doesn't really work. And that took forever to kick in, and it's still not low enough. So I'm looking at this on my cell phone, and who's to say that it wouldn't be more of a generic thing. It is crazy to have to lose potentially 300 pixels off the top of a 1920 tall image. Yeah. If you got to 460, then you might as well just be doing a square stream at that point. Yeah, just 1080, both vertical and horizontal. Alright, let's try 300. Has a lot of blackness, a lot of negative space going on. So yeah, in the past couple of days, doing a little bit of cleaning and decluttering, plugged in some Christmas lights just to see if they worked, and then immediately boxed them up. I'm questioning whether I should just toss a bunch of Christmas stuff, since personally I'm never really going to decorate for Christmas, and it is one large group of things that I could toss, particularly Christmas lights with old bulbs. I could see tossing that, and that's not being a real big loss. Like, I don't know who would really pay for old Christmas lights other than a few eccentric people. Yeah. So more than likely I'm wasting square footage of my house holding on to the things than just tossing them. But yeah, it's probably a lot of stuff in the cleaning and decluttering that I still am holding on to that should be tossed. The other way in which, as I'm still waiting for this to adjust, the other way in which this would potentially be adjusted is that you would squeeze this down from 100% where it is now to a 50%, then you would stretch it back up so that it would be twice as big. But I'm trying to avoid doing things like that. So 300 pixels is too many. So we'll come back down to 225. Let's see how that goes. Yeah. I have been playing Vampire Survivors. It's a fine game so far. I think I'm in the second act. You start the game and there's a lot of stuff that's just hidden and not unlocked. And then you eventually get to that point where you start unlocking things. Now it is kind of weird that there seems to be only really 4 levels and then several bonus levels, and that the levels themselves seem to be pretty simplistic, and the gameplay styles are perhaps not as balanced as I would like them to be. I inherently keep going to garlic as the weapon of choice because it just has an area of effect and you can just literally take your hand off the controller and let the enemies run towards you and die in the area of effect around you. So yeah, there's definitely some things that could be tweaked in Vampire Survivors, but I'm making a lot more progress, having a lot more runs that feel like success. You're getting a lot of gold to slowly upgrade all of your characters and having that roguelite experience that Balatro is sorely missing. Yeah. See, even at the size I want to squeeze the screen down to, which yeah, finally now it just adjusted. 225 seems to be about right. But even at that, you are still having an issue in that there's a chat leaderboard icon showing up, hovering another 150 pixels down. So either I move it down another 150 pixels or I do something different. Yeah. So that would mean also that it would make a lot of sense to take this one. See if we can just drag that up and see if that works fairly well. I probably would have to rescale some things, but yeah, I don't think that's too bad. But see, that's only with the live chat off. If I come back and turn the live chat on, that doesn't seem too bad either. And basically have to have all of the things turned off for it to take the full amount of the screen, and you basically have to have all of this tested out during a live stream, so apologies for this taking too long. There really isn't that much to say about Vampire Survivors. The worst thing I can say about it is that it seems like the audio messes up, but also I left the game running for a very long time, so that's fairly common that applications have memory leaks. And in the case of Vampire Survivors, you might have hundreds of sound files that are playing at the same time or trying to play at the same time, and it definitely seems like they should have capped it to a more reasonable number. And had they capped it to a more reasonable number, then that would have worked a lot better. Okay. So, yeah, that seems like that works pretty good. I will have to resize the banners to take up a little bit more of the negative space. I won't do that in the middle of the stream. But yeah, I can see where Megabonk is very impressive because it's doing Vampire Survivors in 3D graphics and seems to have as fast, if not faster, gameplay and as many, if not more, enemies on screen at the time. It does feel like a lot of Vampire Survivors content might be behind DLC, and at the second of at least 3 acts in the game, I suspect there is potential, certainly, to plateau and have to grind more than some people might like, but I think it's a fairly reasonable amount of grind overall. But yeah, there is definitely room for better balancing, room for a little tweak here and there, room for more levels. The levels are very simplistic. In fact, the levels are so simplistic that it's not until you get into the second act and get an actual map in the pause menu that you are confirmed that the map isn't just a randomly procedurally generated map that goes on forever. As far as I know, it probably could go on forever, but then there are 30-minute or 15-minute time limits in every level, so I don't think if you just ran at the highest speed possible in one direction, you'd ever hit a wall. And it really is only through the goals and the unlocks that you learn that there is a vampire coffin that you're supposed to open, and I still have yet to figure out how you actually are supposed to open that coffin. So what I have been doing for 10 hours in the Vampire Survivors is really just surviving for as long as possible, grinding out, getting as much gold, figuring out how to survive and how to upgrade weapons. And some weapon combos definitely are not as good, not good enough. The garlic weapon, for instance, alone is not good enough to make it all the way to the end of a 30-minute run. Which, yeah, there's still some stuff to learn there. But I wouldn't be surprised if a week or two from now I'm fairly done with Vampire Survivors and just not willing to buy more DLC to play more of it at that point. Because there's other games, certainly, I could move on to. So I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to just leave all of these pages open, or at least one of every page open, to remind myself to actually do some work over Christmas, and hopefully on Friday we'll have a better thing. I am kind of banging my head on, like, I was trying to find a way to automatically scale everything up. Even the pictures here definitely could use scaling, but the scale doesn't really apply well. Yeah. And this isn't quite the same code as before. This time it is literally just adding page margins to the HTML. It's not copying HTML and turning it into 3 different things. 3 columns. I may come back and want to put something on the left side and the right side of the page when I get back to recording a vertical form of it, but at the moment I don't think that's really necessary to worry about. Like when not a vertical form, but a horizontal form. And honestly, if I am going to come back and make a horizontal form of this video, I may very well do it directly in OBS instead of in Firefox, which would be more efficient more than likely, and might even do it post. That there might just be a way to add something on the left and right side visually after the video is already recorded. But yeah, the horizontal and vertical streaming concept at the moment is kind of out the window in favor of this vertical concept experiment. But yeah, we did make some progress there. Not a ton of great progress though, as we can see here in this case. In this case, it is moving everything that has already been moved. And so, to get this to look even somewhat decent, I'm kind of having to zoom out. Plus, there's other things that are just not, they're now showing up because of the dynamic resizing aspect of most pages. So this is kind of a great example of what it would look like when not correctly set up. Yeah. And I could turn off this code for this page, and it's not too bad. Yeah, with that turned off anyways. It just is a little bit on the left side and a little bit on the right side, which maybe means that my capturing is a little off, but I don't know if that's really the case or not. So the thing is, we have two things tweaking here, and so with two things being tweaked at the same time, two different scripts tweaking things differently, because remember, these pages don't really look like this. Pages by default look like this. Just a ton more stuff on the screen and a slightly different color blue background and slightly more of a color palette overall. Bunch of markings for things that are followed and things like that. So my version makes everything a little bit cleaner. But again, you have that whole issue in that if you really wanted to read this, you probably want it to be twice as big, just as the size of text. That's 120% there. Yeah. The good news is because it's Christmas Eve, we can goof around a lot here, and it's not like too much has really changed. The Steam Winter Sale is still going on, and nothing really has changed about the Steam Winter Sale. This Day in Gaming works just fine, as it is. Let's see, let me reload this page and see if that changes any. So, yeah. This is with the 3-column code totally turned off. And it seems like it's to the pixel. Maybe I should put a little bit of margin on the left and right. That is a valid argument. Most things do have some padding and margin on the sides. That being said, every pixel is effectively precious at this level, and even having just like 1 pixel or 5 pixels on the side might be a mistake. Now, on this gaming history, Moby Games site, it is very much left justified, is the word, yeah. So there's a ton of empty space just on the page itself in this case. Again, you really want to zoom things up, but in zooming things up, it starts to change things in a way I don't want it to change things. I was asked and did double check as far as how many people watch me on TV versus how many people watch me on phones, and how many people watch me on tablets, and how many people watch me on computers. The assumption there is a computer would be a horizontal image, a TV would be a horizontal image, and tablets and phones would be vertical. And it is, weirdly, basically an even split. So live streams being vertical does make sense. Plus, YouTube certainly pushing it. So we do have to just kind of be trend chasing. Plus, I really have seen examples of other content creators getting a lot more views going vertical. So it does seem where the new audience may be is going to be in that vertical. This might be clipping off the images on the left side, come to think of it. Yeah, now that I look at it a little bit more. So yeah, vertical does seem like it's the right way, but I should have put a lot more time and a lot more effort into it. I'm still not really at the point where I would say I'm perfectly comfortable in this chair. Like, I don't know why, but it's now causing me to lean over a lot more. I had a back support, maybe that's the issue. Maybe the back support kind of curved around and kept me upright, whereas I'm just leaning more. And yeah, it's still not super comfortable even with the cushion setup, and so there is less of a desire to sit in front of the computer and do programming, but I am still fully willing to sit at the computer and play Vampire Survivors, which really just speaks to me being more focused on the just playing video games. What in the world is going on here? This delay is way... Oh, I'm not on the live, that's why. I zoomed back at some point. Okay, and I can see that a lot of the left side is being clipped on these pages. So, I need to probably adjust my preview on OBS see, is there a way to do that? I think there's a way to do it, but I don't know how. I need the preview to show me the images that are being clipped off and cropped. And it's not really doing that. Yeah. So I do imagine that today will be a pretty uneventful day. I doubt too many people on Christmas Eve are watching YouTube. Thanks to all those who are. For me, Christmas never really means much to me, other than a lot of annoying people trying to enforce a fake cheerfulness. Yeah. And yeah. So I'm not really planning on doing anything today or tomorrow other than just normal things, although I might have somebody ring my doorbell and decide to swing by, but maybe not. But yeah, I definitely recognize that most people check out not only for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, but they tend to check out by the Monday of Christmas week to all the way to New Year. Society in the United States, at least, pretty much comes to a complete halt. That's why I ordered groceries last week, because yeah, even if there was workers, they tend to be seasonal workers, temporary workers, not the most trained workers. I won't say the best, but yeah. And yeah, sales and deliveries from Amazon have completely dried up, which is probably a good thing. But yeah, there's business calls that I basically can't even make until the new year, past the new year, because I know any kind of customer service thing is just going to be either closed completely or full of the most irate and the least trained employees you can possibly find. Yeah. So yeah, I'll probably just be playing a lot of Vampire Survivors and hopefully keep on working on all of the CSS stuff, which, yeah, there's definitely a lot to rethink. I can't help but feel like some of the tweaks I made in the past couple of weeks are going to prove to be fairly redundant tweaks. Yep. Apparently I have some videos scheduled that are coming out. I saw Tabletop Simulator Quick Look, using the phrase quick look, perhaps for the first time on my channel. Came out, and yeah, I was sorely disappointed in Tabletop Simulator when I looked at it, but that was probably 6 months ago, too. But yeah, no views on it yet, which is not super surprising. Someone commented on one of my videos as far as where are all my subscribers, and that is a somewhat valid question, or point to at least talk about, is that having 1,000 subscribers over 10 plus years of running a YouTube channel really, I think, boils down to having only maybe 100 subscribers that are still getting notifications. And yeah, YouTube has just been over the years making notifications harder and harder to actually receive. Um, Even the notification for this live stream on my own phone was easily missed. One thing certainly I have to address here is that because the text is so small on the screen for me too, I can't really read what I'm scrolling down through. So if there was any room for insightful commentary, it's getting squashed because of me being unable to read it. Yeah. It might be that with bigger monitors in general, and higher resolution monitors in general, you always needed to have a 2x zoom, 200% zoom on the text. Suppose that is somewhat believable if we go back and think about the old days of computer monitors being 640 by 480. The font size there would potentially be better. The biggest issue though is that there's just like no subpixels. So if you start to like double something up, you start to see the pixels too. So just scaling things 2x is not the way to do it. The way to do it is to change the font size of everything. So that also applies to the pictures themselves. They need to be changed as far as their sizes go. And most of that is just dynamically being done. So yeah, it's not really a great solution here. And this is all being done in Firefox also, which there's a new person in charge of Firefox, so that's an issue too. And I'm gonna have to work really hard to get rid of margins too. But yeah, when you look at this at 200x, it's still pixely when you start to magnify it even more, but it's not particularly pixely at 200x when you zoom in this way. It's because the zoom that Firefox is doing is just lowering the resolution of the canvas that the web page is on. Right. And this really goes to show that just zooming things in is not the solution. I'm still playing Memento Mori. Right now, pretty much they're doing nothing because it would be kind of crazy to add a whole new event around Christmas. They'll probably add a New Year event, if anything. Still playing Pokemon TCG. They sneakily added a new package in Pokemon TCG and then have been fairly silent. They may have a player versus player event going on, I think they do, but that's still something I'm not really engaging in. And I am barely playing Magica Modica. That's still 3 mobile games that need work. Certainly one of the issues of having glasses now too is that since these are far-sighted glasses, I have to take them off to read anything that is on my phone. It's funny where the distance seems to be a problem, but I'd say it's fairly unreadable at arm's length, and then fairly readable at a half arm's length. So I'm holding the phone probably a foot away from my face. And see, that scares me, to say the least, because it tells me that there is a very narrow range in which my nearsighted vision is kicking in and working, and it is about a foot away from me, and then by the time you're 2 feet away from me, I need the glasses, and anything past that I need the glasses, and anything closer than a foot away is blurry, but I think that would be pretty normal, that if you had something right up to your face, it would be blurry. Yeah. It actually is fairly readable, though, at this resolution. If I stop and don't scroll, which I also adjusted the scrolling, so it only moves down one line of text, which means I should be able to line up pretty well anything. Although I question if maybe I should actually have it move exactly 1 pixel every time I scroll up and down. But that would take way too long to scroll anywhere if that's the case. It's already gone from 3 lines to 1 line, so it's a third as fast as it used to be to scroll. But then also the scrolling, because of the way streaming works, I basically need to scroll, then pause to let it load in the keyframe and image and buffer. Yeah, I don't think there's a real way to fix that either. Like, on the streaming version of these videos, it will just always, I think, be the case that that first few frames will be compressed and ugly, and then it will kick in and have all the information and look right. So yeah, there is definitely an argument for maybe an automated scroll feature. I don't know how you would really implement something like that, though. Now, Steam pages are the ones that I really did work on, so theoretically this is exactly correct. There's a little bit of background here, and then when the background ends is right where the screen ends. I was having a heck of a time also just getting things to be centered. A lot of things wanted to be to the left or right. And this is a good example, I think, of where a page in verticality can be very useful, but also the default look here has just a lot of empty space. Yeah. And I'm not going to actually work on it, but we can see what the verticality looks like on my chart, although it is not getting all of the chart here. This too almost works, but it fails in that the bottom is getting cropped off, and thus you're not seeing any of the names of the games. Doesn't matter, I'm not going to use that chart. Yeah, some of this is getting cropped off. Wait, that's because it's not zoomed in right. That's not working either. That's 110%. I don't know why 110% works on this page particularly well. But yeah, we can see I've been playing Vampire Survivors. I have 46 out of 243 achievements. So there really must be a massive amount of stuff that's still hidden in secret. It says I've been playing it for 26 hours. I've really only been playing it for 10 hours. And since I've started playing Vampire Survivors, I have not gone back to play Balatro. And I definitely feel like Vampire Survivors is a better experience already than Balatro. One of the things, though, I will mention So I have no idea who this character is. There are many characters you can select in Vampire Survivors, but I don't know who this character is, and it is not the default first character that you have unlocked and playable to you. It might be one of the 3 first players, but the only magic user is using a magic wand, not summoning circles, which is what I would call this. And certainly it shows the cheesecake, almost classic now, comic book pose where you try to get the face of the character and maybe the boobs and the butt all in one pose is something that sells. But yeah, the regular start menu screen has a vampire that I have not seen a humanoid vampire. I've just seen a bunch of bats that I assume are vampire bats, and a Belmont with a whip type character from Castlevania. It's clearly heavily inspired by Castlevania. So yeah, the winter sale is still going on, and yeah, we will see how that looks. Yeah, it does again seem like a couple of pixels are getting clipped from the left and right, and I guess in this case is literally because of the squeezing of the screen. This is just not really resolution that people are expecting websites to be at, where it is this tall. So it's going to take some extra adjustment, certainly. But yeah, once you've done your shopping on the winter sale, it's kind of pointless to go back to the storefront. I saw DF Retro speculating on rumors that the Steam Machine might launch with a Half-Life 3. I think any rumor around Half-Life 3 has long since proven to just be nonsense clickbait at this point. Yeah, it doesn't seem like you get as many games in this format. It seems like it kind of cuts off the list based on how many it thinks it can fit. It would be somewhat interesting, I guess, if the Steam Machine launched with a Half-Life 3. Whatever Half-Life 3 is, though, it's probably going to be somewhat of a disappointment, since there's just a lot of hype and expectations around it. So yeah, I haven't ever even played any of the Half-Life games, so on that aspect I am thankfully mostly immune from stuff like that. Yeah, and then the assumption still is that we will never see any refurbs available. Yeah. Yeah. As far as Steam Decks, wow, the whole page didn't load, or something about the resolution caused it to not load. Yeah. Yeah, I tried to reload the page and the whole thing just goes down. Okay. Right. Here's 100% on the top played Steam Deck games. Mega Bonk is also a great example of just trying to chase trends. By the time I would get it, because I really want to buy games when they're on sale, it would be more than likely irrelevant. And by the time I'd make footage and put it out, it would almost certainly be irrelevant. Even now, if I played Megabonk right now, live streamed it, it would probably be fairly irrelevant. So, yeah. Just don't think I really would be ever one to catch a wave. And yeah, here you can see in this icon the vampire Dracula-like character, which I have yet to see. Yeah. You can see like Detroit Become Human is being played on the Steam Deck because I think it went on sale. But yeah, there's definitely a large percentage of games on Steam and just available elsewhere that never really go on discount, and because they never really go on discount, people are a certain audience, the more frugal amongst us, will just never buy it, never play it. And all of those Quantic Dream games in particular were always a little overpriced, in my opinion. This page in particular suffers pretty badly by having columns on the left and right, so if I scroll back up, it makes a lot of sense to get rid of this column custom so that more space can be taken up. But then there is also a lot of room here. And again, I guess we could possibly try and zoom up and at 150%, which might be the right scale. That is much more readable. But you go to 170 as the next option and it changes everything. This still is clipping low at 150%. It's clipping everything here and further. As far as my things here, I would have to go back and fix these to have more margin, more padding on the margins on either side. But it's not too bad right now. It's just the longer sentences that are getting clipped. What is that? Something's making a sound. I think it's my chair. I don't know why. I've hit the button to make it vibrate. I've hit the heat button recently. I normally had the remote control on the recliner, like hidden in, squished in the cushions. Yeah, but that's not working nowadays because of the air cushion taking up too much space. Yeah. Let me just adjust myself in the chair. I feel like it might be several. One thing I'm afraid it might be is that the chair itself is about to fall apart. Which, yeah, no better way to break anything than to move it. So maybe moving the chair is weakened it. I would hate to buy a new recliner, but also might give me any excuse to buy a new recliner. If it happened, it would be an extra expense, a pretty big expense. You don't get a decent recliner for less than $500. And yeah, there was a point where I was looking at the thought of a medical bed that sits up to be a chair, which would be way more expensive and probably unnecessary. I don't know if they're built particularly well. There's only a couple companies that make them, and they're very possibly fly-by-night companies. Alright, well, I've adjusted my position somewhat here, and see if that helps any. You might be the several cushions I have sitting around are getting bumped around. Yeah. Yeah, anything that moves the chair might be bumping the microphone. Yeah. My microphone stand in particular, it has 3 legs. In the past I have put one leg under the chair, and I think that was a mistake, because then moving in the chair would create noise on the microphone, because even the tiniest of bump, here, this is my pinky finger bumping the microphone stand, and it just echoes very loudly. Alright, well, Video Game Chronicles, you can see how the headlines are totally messed up here, not really centered. The images are not scaled, because I have in the past been doing so much to adjust and center things, and so much of Video Games Chronicles and my other news sources have extra columns and extra ugliness to them that a lot of adjustment needs to be made. So like all of the text here is getting clipped off on the left side, and then when we scroll down, the YouTube videos are like way out of sync and in the wrong format. So everything is a real big mess for Video Games Chronicles. So we'll just go through the headlines. Again, I don't believe there's going to be too many news stories today. Today's going to be more than likely a fairly short stream. The 500th game of Arcade Archives series is out on Christmas Day, and it's an iconic one. Hamster Corporation will be celebrating the milestone with classic Space Invaders. So yeah, Arcade Archive seems to be the place to go for old arcade games, if you must have old arcade games specifically on Steam. It is fairly different styles of games, arcade games, and I don't know if having them on Steam, playing them on your PC, playing them without using something like MAME emulators and ROMs is in any way a better experience. More than likely it's not a better experience. Plus, I would mostly suggest a highly curated experience as far as your arcade experience. If you are going to play arcade games, things that you're really nostalgic for, you really enjoy, it is kind of crazy to try and have arcade games that you've never played before. Most arcade games kind of sucked, and there was a big case where people thought arcade machines were going to be super replayable and that they would stay around forever, and fairly quickly people realized that the arcade machines were pretty dull and they would stop making any money. And so while you would have maybe 1 or 2 really old arcade machines stay around, there was a ton of trading arcade machines for different arcade machines, and a ton of board swapping going on for arcade machines, where they would simply change what game was being played in that wooden frame setup. But yeah, era of having cartridges was very much necessary, being able to swap things out. And if we still really had arcade machines these days, it would kind of make sense to have a arcade machine that had potentially a dozen games on it. It's not like pinball tables where each one has to really be custom built. Most arcade machines have a pretty generic lineup, and even the S&K machines started to realize that pretty quickly. Is that you'd have several fighting games all in one machine. Right. Moving on. 007 First Light has been delayed by 2 months. IO Interactive says it's confident this sets 007 First Light up for long-term success. I watched the second episode of Fallout 2 Season 2. Yeah, I don't know if there's really too much to say there. It feels like the first episode was a lot of setup, and it feels like the second episode was a lot of setup. And it does kind of feel like what you're going to run into is just a bunch of setup with small payoff, then setup with small payoff, then setup with small payoff. And because Fallout Season 2 is being released weekly, episodically, it may just not be as fun of an experience as the first season, where you could power through 2 or 3 episodes, and by watching 2 or 3 episodes you felt like you were having a much better experience than having to wait a week. So I guess my suggestion would be, don't watch Fallout Season 2 yet. Watch it when all of the episodes are out, which is a general good suggestion for any TV show. They still are calling things Las Vegas, not New Vegas, despite the fact that this is supposed to be taking place after the events of the New Vegas, the video game. There is a commercial that plays calling Fallout an Xbox game, while also saying every single device in the world, including Fire TV sticks, are Xboxes. Which I definitely cringe at the thought that Fallout is an Xbox game. It may be on Xbox and it may be owned by Microsoft, but I definitely don't think Fallout as a series has been uniquely designed or particularly even successful on Xbox. But yeah, it does also certainly feel like the it definitely feels like to me that the lost my train of thought here. My smart home is complaining to me about something losing connection. Yeah, it feels like the Fallout Season 2 is really just trying to have more celebrities. And it feels like canonically the New California Republic has been completely eliminated as a character in a canonical ending. I'm still looking at my new monitor, and I feel like there might be one black dead pixel that I see every now and then, but I can't really find it. I guess the easiest way to do that would be could just open MS Paint. Let's see. What is that under accessories? Paint. There we go. Not on that screen. On that screen. Yeah. There is a dead pixel in the monitor. Or a couple of them. Yeah, there's a little plus symbol. Wait a minute, why is my magnifier moving it then? Oh, because what I'm looking at is my cursor being magnified. Right, well, yeah, there is a dead pixel there. Good. Good to know. Unfortunately, nothing to really do about it. But yeah, there's no real warranty on my monitor, and for most cases, if it is black and dead, I won't even notice it, but that does suck. You would want 0 dead pixels. But I'm sure I'll, unless something else goes wrong with this monitor, I'll use it for a long time. There's not any real way to fix dead pixels. Yeah. So, yeah. I'm rambling a lot today. Am I watching any other TV? Not really. Little things here and there. Still trying to get through Ron the 1/2. It was probably a mistake, although not really that much of a mistake to buy Ron the 1/2 on Blu-ray when Blu-ray and animation in particular is all getting turned into Crunchyroll and streaming only. Let's see. Moving on, GTA Tokyo almost actually happened with an external studio, Rockstar Veteran claims. A studio in Japan was intended to make a Tokyo-based GTA according to a former developer. I have no idea how that would work. That seems kind of crazy. And this definitely seems like this is just nonsense being spouted out to hype out GTA 6. Now, why does that sound crazy? Because there just aren't that many cars in Tokyo, or Japan in general. Not that many cars at all. So, how in the world would you have a Grand Theft Auto experience when there aren't that many cars? You would have to pretty quickly turn it into motorbikes, motorcycles, or motor scooters, which then doesn't feel very GTA. The other issue certainly is that there is not that much non-Yakuza crime that happens in Japan. It's a fairly safe country, so the idea of running over people or robbing them is pretty antithetical to what you would expect to happen in Tokyo. And then also running over prostitutes, which is often a favorite pastime of people who play GTA. Might be a little bit harder to do. Prostitution is illegal in Japan, but it is narrowly defined as actual intercourse, so anything short of intercourse is, I think, legal, or at least considered legal amongst Japanese on Japanese people doing it. It's certainly not prosecuted much. So, yeah. And yeah, most of the prostitution I've heard in Japan also does not cater to anyone other than Japanese people. So, yeah. If you were going to make a GTA game, it would very quickly feel just like a Yakuza game. And you'd almost certainly have to be a member of the Yakuza. And if you were to drastically change the culture of Japan to make a GTA game make sense, there's not much about the layout of Tokyo that's that interesting that you would want to make a city based on Tokyo. If you were going to go international and outside of the United States, which is almost certainly a mistake, you would want to have a situation where it was a very interesting city. And so I would think you would probably want to do France. France has a lot of cars and an interesting city to redesign. You could do London too, tons of cars there, too many cars, really. But very quickly the cultural differences stack up very heavily against having a GTA outside the United States, because you need the level of that kind of crime story to really be in the United States. A GTA Canada doesn't make a lot of sense. Maybe you could do a GTA Mexico or South America, but yeah, it definitely is the case that the United States is the central point for having lots of guns, lots of violence, lots of big open roads, lots of big cities. It makes no sense that you would get anywhere close to green lighting a GTA in any other country. So, yeah, I feel like this is nonsense. Although, maybe they were thinking of doing that somewhere around GTA 3, where the scope of games were a lot smaller. In modern times, it doesn't make any sense. I guess if it was still like GTA 1 and it was a top-down game, you could see that may be making some sense, but even then it really doesn't. Inherently, I have to also point out that I just don't think GTA as a game concept is particularly good. The idea of stealing cars and driving around and doing stunts. Most of what I've seen people do with GTA in the past 10 years is people playing and making their own fun, doing stunt jumps and things like that. Where its main advantage of GTA is that it's had decent stories around it, and you could almost certainly tell the same stories with a completely different gameplay style. Moving on, EA shareholders have greenlit the $55 billion takeover by Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund. Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund would own 93.4% of the Battlefield publisher if it clears government scrutiny, which there is a high chance it will pass government scrutiny, because I believe this is Trump's son-in-law. That is, yeah. The Public Investment Fund partnered with Affinity Partners as an American investment firm that was formed in 2021 by Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, alleging that the firm is only involved so that it will be more easy to get approved by the US government. Which, yeah, that would be my suspicion too. It is a stupid argument, I think, to make, to say that EA is already so awful that somehow Saudi Arabia owning EA will make it better. That is perhaps the only positive argument I could make. Otherwise, I would say this is definitely a thing that should fall through, and one would hope that this kind of acquisition would fall through in such a spectacular form that it would force EA to break up into smaller companies and have to do a lot better by its consumers and do a lot better by the IPs that it has acquired to become the giant monolith that it is at the moment and really should have never been allowed to become. But yeah, mergers are never the answer, as it were. Oh, I guess the other thing I'm watching is Pluribus, and I may have seen the entire first season now. I'm not sure if there are any more episodes coming out. Can't really say too much about it, though. It seems like the entire first season was really just setting up the concept and setting up for the eventual conflict. And the first season feels like, if the episode I've seen is the final episode of the first season, it's really just setting up for a potential conflict where I would prefer for a season to fully solve one conflict and maybe introduce and tease another conflict for another season. But it is Apple TV, so they're probably going to get at least a second season anyways. Doesn't have anything to do with video games, though. I am rambling. Let's see. Bloober Team says its mysterious Nintendo exclusive will please Resident Evil fans of Resident Evil, Silent Hill, and Eternal Darkness. Project M will feature gameplay that could only exist on Nintendo hardware. Right, well then that tells me immediately that it is some kind of gimmick Joy-Con wiggle mote gyroscope thing. Because yeah, Switch 2 hardware in particular doesn't really have anything too new or innovative in it. Nintendo does have this weird history of having games, horror games, pop up on it. But they are throwing out a lot of different names here. Resident Evil, more of an action game than Silent Hill is. Limbo is a completely different style of game, and Eternal Darkness is a pretty old game. Limbo is pretty old too. And I guess if you're talking about the first Resident Evil and the first Silent Hill, and Limbo and Eternal Darkness, you're talking about a very old looking game. This screenshot here implies that it isn't that old looking. Doesn't seem like they have a trailer to show at the moment, though. And so this all very well could be vaporware and never really come to actually being released. Let's see. Here we have, quote, an unimaginable loss. The game industry reacts to the tragic death of the Call of Duty co-creator Vince Zampella. The veteran behind many acclaimed shooter games died in a car accident this week. Well, that's new news to me. I hadn't heard about this. Yeah, car accidents happen. Mostly, though, when we hear of a death, it's someone that either self-eliminated themselves. Why am I censoring myself? Committed suicide, or died of cancer or something like that. A very prominent number of people with cancer. Yeah, you can see the scrolling down here. These are really not working. And so yeah, I think this is probably a very long page of people reacting. I think there's two things you can say about this. One it's weird that people don't react when somebody dies of cancer, or when it's more expected, or when it is due to drugs, alcohol abuse, or suicide. And two, it's weird that a lot of people just don't react at all, or at least it doesn't get reported on when it's not someone who is huge in the industry, which inherently, I guess, probably highlights that CEOs and managers and big people, big names that get their names out there and are meeting and greeting people a lot more, tend to form their own in-group, and that in-group does not include the new hire at a video game company. Yeah. If this was somebody who had been working at a game company for a year, you definitely wouldn't have people, famous people on Twitter, putting out comments there. And if we are going to mourn the death of any one person, it's only fair that we try to mourn the death of everyone. And yeah, never really happens. He was 55 years old. Car accidents do happen more often in the winter months. Seems like the passenger also died, so someone else being unnamed here died. It is, video game wise, questionable when the last time of Zampanella has worked on Call of Duty. And apparently Modern Warfare 2 in 2009 was the last time he actually worked on Call of Duty, video game wise. That it's not really important in the real world, but it's informative to know. Yeah. So yeah, car accident. And then, okay, before we do the Gamatsu news, I do want to take a short break. So let's see if we can see what happens there. I'll be back in just a few minutes. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. I may end up taking another break. Honestly, if we're talking about really sad stories, we probably should take a break for those types of stories, or anything that would be changing the tone and attitude, because we try to keep it light, or I try to keep it light. And yeah, the showing off of Yu-Gi-Oh! While I was paused there was a mess, so I needed to adjust a lot there. I'm not gonna. There's really not a lot to do there that you can do. When you're doing vertical streaming Yu-Gi-Oh! It's just gonna look pretty awful. There's no way around it. The one thought would be to rotate the screen, which, yeah, maybe that is the best way to just handle that. It's just to still technically stream in vertical, but rotate that scene source so then it becomes horizontal. Of course, if anyone has a computer monitor that is vertical, that won't work too well for them, but it works for most people, I think. Oh, by the way, I also increased the amount of bandwidth up, which, yeah, seems like I can get away with doing that, so that's not a big deal. Alright, so let's go through the Gematsu news now. Again, it's all just going to need tweaks here. Like big tweaks here. I can't even read the headline. It's being clipped off. But the Danganronpa series shipments and digital sales have topped, I think that would be 10 million. I did get those games. Released most of these. Danganronpa S Ultimate Summer Camp and the newest one that was announced, I don't think is out yet. But yeah, looks like Danganronpa doing pretty good. And my auto Steam Link launcher does seem to be working. Yeah, they're calling it Danganronpa 2x2 on Steam. And it does seem like Steam is having real trouble today. I don't know if that's because it's Christmas Eve or what. Yeah. This is the new game, and then Ultimate Summer Camp just doesn't seem like it wants to load. And I don't think that has anything to do with my plugins. Let's see. Some Nabi free DLC, A Hunted Day for Switch launches in Japan. I suppose is what that's supposed to say. Can't even read the headlines. Oh man, I really should have done such a better job than this. This is so half-assed. I was in a better situation last stream, by far, just by doing the weird resolution. But yeah, I should have really worked on this on the weekend. A dark mystery visual novel, Mamiya, a something illusion. Does that say shared illusion of the world's end? It's coming to the Switch in, I think, Japan. Yeah. It's just not good. This game is rated very positively on Steam, though. Came out in 2021. Looks like a visual novel. Looks pretty good. Sanabi: A Haunted Day is DLC for a game called Sanabi. Which, yeah. So the Steam pages were opening before, and they just aren't now. And I didn't change anything. And then Mommy Doomsday Dreams is also DLC. Which is weird for a visual novel to have DLC. I guess I'll put it on the wishlist since the base game is on the wishlist. Assuming things can go on the wishlist, but they can't because Steam is just not responding. We talked about 007 First Light being delayed to May 27th, 2026. Yeah. I definitely do feel like this is a game that is going to just do nothing at all. It'll just be very uneventful when it comes out, much like the Indiana Jones game was fairly uneventful when it came out. I think the truth of the matter is that the fandom that are the likes of me are too old, and the new fandom and the majority of gamers don't really care about old movies like Indiana Jones or 007 James Bond movies. It may very well be the case that the people who are making games and greenlighting games are too old too. And clearly there's a desperation going on, a real desire to have some of these older IPs succeed, but they've just dropped the ball on them. James Bond movies stopped being fun probably 15 years ago for me. Indiana Jones movies stopped being fun after the third movie, really, in the long break. Yeah. There's just a bad nurturing of those series. Alright, moving on. Caput Mortem is now available for Switch. It's a first-person horror game from Wild Arts. Let's see it on Steam. It's rated very positively. It is also one of those games that I guess really hasn't gone discounted enough to catch my attention. Yeah. I could definitely see myself just very quickly breezing past this. Oh, by the way, let's address that. Yeah. The zoom was too high on those pages. So yeah, this is the one thing I did work on, and you can see it's just pixel to pixel using all of the space. But the reality of the situation is that the two-column concept really doesn't make a lot of sense. And what we really would like it to do is trigger the one-column concept, but I have to go all the way up to 240 times the size before that one-column concept triggers in the reactive experience. And even when you get into that one-column concept, it is still not quite exactly what you would want. The text is nice and big, but you're scrolling down quite a bit before you even get to the descriptions of things when it is at that size. Infinite scroll becomes double infinite at that point. Also, if we implement the one column concept on Steam. I'm going to very quickly run out of spare room here to move things upward. Although, part of the reason why I was moving things upward is because I had sized everything to fit a widescreen image so that you would only be seeing this top part and you'd have the pretty pictures. Going vertical, that falls apart. Which, that alone makes a decent argument to go back to being horizontal and not do vertical. Because, yeah, the horizontal aspect here does look pretty bad. As far as looking at the actual pictures, there's just not a lot of pixels being dedicated to that. Really, it would be more of a case that Steam itself would have to implement a vertical format for that kind of browsing, which would mean vertical screenshots for horizontal games, which would be weird. Let's see. Kanade is now available for Switch in Japan. The visual novel was first released for PC. You can see it is rated very positively on Steam, and yet weirdly didn't make it to my wish list or the follow list for some reason. I don't know why that would be the case, although I could see that perhaps there is a move here to remove visual novels from my wish list if they had nudity in them, but this one doesn't even have nudity in it, so that wouldn't make any sense. Again, maybe it makes more sense to have a margin on the left and right to just kind of squeeze in some. It probably does make some sense looking at it at my phone, on my phone. It doesn't feel like that's the way. Yeah. Doesn't feel like it's getting all the pixels it should be getting. Moving on with the Gematsu articles, Yakuza Kiwami 3 and Dark Ties gameplay overview is available on Gematsu. Check it out if you're interested. You can see this game is already on the follow list. Neverness to Everness Coex test signups are now available. Sounds like a mobile game. Bunch of anime characters. So yeah. Still doesn't feel like it's quite a 1-to-1 pixel ratio. I don't really know why that's the case. It should be. Then we talked about Infinity Ward and Respawn Entertainment guys Vince Zampella killed in a car crash. Yeah, very rarely do we have stories like that pop up and get mentioned. Saturday AM Battle Manga confirmed for PC, and debut trailer is available. I don't know if this is based off of something. I can immediately tell you it's probably a Western animator because you just wouldn't see African characters in a manga too often. So yeah. Yeah, what I'm seeing on the screen right now looks, I can't put it on the fall list. Steam is just straight up down. Like, but what I'm looking at on stream right now looks perfect. That it looks pixel perfect as far as where it shows up on the screen. But when I get to the preview in 60 seconds, it's not going to look pixel perfect. Persona 3 Reload version 1.03 update for the Switch 2 is now available, improving frame rates. Which that's not really a game you would think would need improved frame rates. Persona 3 on Steam is overwhelmingly positive. Sonic Racing Crossworlds Nights content dropped, updated launches December 24th. This game is very positively received. And let me look at that thing. Yeah. It is getting cropped. So what the heck resolution does Steam really want? I mean, does YouTube really want? I mean, it seems crazy. You would think that 1920 by 1080 would be an absolutely acceptable resolution, and yet it's still getting cropped. And I don't think I really want to just kowtow to whatever Steam streaming thing is that much. So it does look like I should just add maybe 10 to 20 pixels on the edges as far as margin goes via Firefox. Yep. Guess I don't really have anything to say about Sonic Racing Crossworlds. Let's see. Chronos: The New Dawn adds an easier difficulty option, temporal diver mode in early 2026, I assume, is when that comes out. This is far too typically a case that happens with games, though, is that they come out and they have only one difficulty, or they don't have an easy difficulty, and then later on they add an easier difficulty, which I don't think it helps anything to really do that. And I think it really speaks to the fact that a lot of game developers get so good at their games, they spend 2 to 4 years developing their games, that they've lost touch with reality as far as what your average gamer is going to be able to actually accomplish. And so I definitely think game developers should just be way more aware of that and have easy difficulties on day one launched. Let people play the way they want to play so you can get a bigger audience, so you can sell your product and make it an actual success. The idea that you're going to get a bump 6 months later because you're at a lower difficulty is pretty unbelievable. You might get a bump because the price goes down at that same time, but I wouldn't buy a game at full price just because I added a easier difficulty. I might buy a game at full price if I was planning on buying it anyways and I was scared of it being too difficult, but there's very few games in which I'm actively scared of it being too difficult. Just mostly Dark Souls games, like Elden Ring for instance, might be a game that I would be more encouraged to buy if it had an easier difficulty setting, which I believe it does have an easier difficulty setting. You can see that Chronos the New Dawn already was on my wish list and is rated very positively. So if anything, the fact that they've announced a new difficulty setting, that just gives me an excuse not to buy it. Of course, the main reason why I wasn't buying it is just the price tag. In particular, $60 for what looks like a AA game is asking a little too much, and being discounted to $45 is still asking a little too much. Let's see, Postal 4, No Regrets, Free Roam, and Free Regret, Free Roam, and over 150 additions, updates, and improvements have been added to the PlayStation Store, and I think PC. The thought here, I imagine, is that Postal very quickly rushed to release this, and probably planned on releasing this pretty soon anyways, but they wanted to get away from the AI other game that was accused of using AI and then was instantly canceled, so probably was using AI. Otherwise you would have thought they would have fought a little harder to keep that game around. We can see here that Postal 4 No Regrets is mostly negative in the last 30 days and mixed. And honestly, I'm thinking that the Postal series is just not really relevant enough to play. Honestly, I think maybe the first Postal game had some relevancy a long time ago. 2012 is when Postal 2 came out, but it has long since lost that. And I bet because Steam is down that none of these reviews will load. Yeah. One of the things that's the problem, I think, with Postal also is that it's just not YouTube friendly, and it's remade and re-released the first game. And yeah, as gamers, I think we're just in a very different place. We have GTA if you want to run around and cause chaos and do this diabolical things. And I don't think there really is enough room for two games like that. And the edgelords among us have mostly grown up and don't really want to play edgelord style games. That's pretty much all I would say Postal is. Let's see, Gmod Archives Plus Armored Core Mobile 3 has been announced. Sounds like a anime game, if I was to guess. And that's going to bring us to Gaming on Linux articles, which in this case the text is small enough that I really wouldn't have to change anything on this title screen. Yeah, these will be things I would work on the least amount anyways. Like, I really don't care if the text gets clipped a little bit on these. Let's see. So we have a Happy Holidays, Merry Christmas, Merry New Year from Gaming on Linux. Remember, Gaming on Linux is run by one person, so I suspect we will not get too many new news stories after this one. They have their 2025 Game of the Year picks. You can see how it's all sized wrong and all spaced wrong. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely have a concern here that I'm doing all this work to go vertical, and in the end, it's not even going to be better. There is just going to be a real failure in that aspect of what I'm attempting to do. Of course, then there is also the concern I move over to Linux and then everything in Linux is broken. Like, I am really banking heavily on an assumption that I can take two monitors and combine them into one in Bazzite and Linux in one way or the other, and I'm pretty sure I can do that, but not 100% sure. Gaming on Linux says Siren is an awesome looking Aliens-inspired Doom 2 conversion. And I kind of want to watch this trailer, even though everything is in the way. Let's increase the playback speed to 2 times. So this is using the UZ Doom, Ultimate Doom engine. And with that you can see it is showing stuff that almost certainly could not actually be depicted with the original Doom engine of many years ago. One thing DF Retro talked about is how it does seem like for 2026 and the foreseeable future, almost all games are going to be made with the Unreal Engine. Yeah. That it has just become the de facto engine that big game companies are going to use because they're not interested in using Unity in the first place, or they are definitely not interested after Unity did all those different licensing shenanigans, changes, and rule changes. And yeah, moving over to the Godot engine doesn't really work for AAA hyper-realistic first-person shooter games. Not yet, at least. And nobody wants to be the first game company to spend millions of dollars trying to convert a game to the Godot engine, or make a game in the Godot engine only to find out it fails miserably. It'll probably be 3 or 4 years from now we'll see big game developers come out with small games on the Godot engine, if they were going to do anything on the Godot engine, that they would just let a side project happen using that engine to learn it and figure out how much it could really do. Yeah, and we, in fairness, have not yet seen any Godot engine game that was mostly small but then all of a sudden had really polished visuals, in the way that Megabonk has fairly polished visuals compared to Vampire Survivors 2D top-down visuals. And Megabonk's visuals aren't even that polished. Let's see, we have another Gaming on Linux article, Keep the Creatures Fed in the Deck Builder Hungry Horrors, when it arrives January 19th, 2026. Interesting. Yeah. A card-based adventure where you're feeding the enemies is a interesting twist, particularly since it crosses that extreme level of difficulty that most games have, where they are violent just because violence is the default thought. Yeah. Still a level of death, a level of violence if you lose, but at the very least you're reducing the level of violence. Yeah, I don't know how in-depth a game like this might be, but could be very interesting. Yeah. Guess Avowed was one of the Game of the Year games. This is already on my follow list. What I've changed really should not have broken Steam. So I do assume Steam is just down for everyone. Because all I'm really doing is changing the visuals. Gmode game is another non-English game. You see, this is kind of a great example. This coming soon, non-English language. All of that was information that I was going to move up to the top bar, but may not really be needed to be moved up to the top bar if we just stay at this verticality level. Which, okay. If that works that way, then that's great. It brings us to GameDeveloper.com. We have the obituary for Vince Zampella. Very short obituary. I imagine people rushed to put this out and didn't spend too much time on it. And then we have this game open for some reason. I don't know why. And then there's a report that Naughty Dog employees were hit with mandatory overtime on Intergalactic. Workers at Sony's Naughty Dog were reportedly working extra hours on the demo for Intergalactic to Heretic Prophet. It's not uncommon in other industries for there to be mandatory overtime. Often in union jobs, it's a way of driving people crazy and getting them to quit. But we don't hear about it too often in the game industry. Although, to be fair, the reason why we don't hear about it much in the game industry is because it is just the default. Particularly in Japanese companies, it is just the default to work more than 40 hours a week, and it is crazy that we think 40 hours a week is the right number of hours somebody should be working in the first place. It probably should be closer to 30 hours, if there's any amount that humans actually need to work. So, I don't know if this is an indication of much of anything. It's probably a good indication for gamers, at least, in that they are actually trying to make the demo a good experience, which we would hope that would move over to make the actual game a good experience. Better than just shoveling out a garbage game. Here we have Dispatch. And the blur still is a thing that I'm going to maintain and engage with. That may be the only thing. I still need to tweak it a little bit though. I need a button that says show everything versus a button that says don't show everything. Because Dispatch in particular has been a #1 game that has been talked about a lot and has some sexual content in it, although not a lot, and thus is getting blurred, which, in fairness, the tags do line up with what should be blurred. Ubisoft Halifax workers have formed a union, the first North American union at Ubisoft. Some more text here. This is properly formatted, weirdly. So, GameDeveloper.com, perhaps one of the pages I've changed the least, so I don't have to actually do any real tweaks there. Now would be the point where we would do all the new games on Steam. But apparently, that didn't occur. And I would assume that's because Steam is down. Which means we are going to have a nice and easy 2-hour stream. I guess the only thing we could do left, because we can't do the follow-list cleanup either, is just type in is Steam down, and we'll search the down detector website. See what it says. Yeah. So it is saying that user reports trouble. Yeah. So it does just seem like Steam is down. So it's not just me. Yeah. And let's see if I was to try and open this in a new link right now. Just won't load. Okay. So I have a lot of work to do still. And we may probably stream on Friday. I don't see a real reason to break, but it would probably be a fairly small stream in that case also. And it may be a case that I will just get back to playing too much Vampire Survivors and not actually fix these pages. Because, yeah, there's obviously done. Still looking for feedback as far as, does this vertical stream make any sense at all? Or am I just completely barking up the wrong tree? In the long run, I think it will be better, but who knows. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this stream. Not a lot was accomplished. Friday, actually, with Steam being down, means that Friday will